Hi everyone, welcome back to MOG Economics YouTube channel. Hope you're doing okay. So today we'll be looking at the concept of tax incidence, right? So I don't think tax should be something that is strange to you. So at a point in your life or at a point in our lives, we get to pay taxes, right? It may be little, it may be much, it may be all of that, but at least we get to pay taxes, right? So what is tax, right? So tax is a compulsory levy imposed by the government or its, agencies in charge of tax, collection, right, on people and goods and services. So tax is a compulsory levy that the government imposes on people and goods and services. So taxes might be imposed for various reasons. That isn't what I really want to talk about like in this class. But then it's all cool because everything falls under public finance. Right. So tax can be imposed, majorly speaking, taxes are imposed to generate government revenue, right? But then there might be several other reasons for imposing taxes. For example, you are trying to restrict the importation of harmful commodities into your country, or you are trying to prevent dumping, right? So dumping in economics simply means, foreign countries selling goods, at prices lower than the amount they charge in their own country, right, in another market, right? So like, let me explain it very well. So dumping is simply a concept that refers to, foreign businesses selling goods and services to other countries at prices lower than the prices they charge in their own economy. So the government might decide that, okay, I don't want dumping in my economy. Like, let's say the US is dumping goods and services into Nigeria, and then we may even talk about used clothes, right? So in case you are likely going to be a Nigerian seeing this, so I don't know. If you're a foreigner, then it's okay. So if you look at Nigeria, for example, a lot of us are, purchasing first and second hand, whatever clothes, grade one, grade two, grade whatever. They are not really new clothes. They are clothes that have been used in other countries. And then they get so they are clothes of good qualities, right? And then they get sold to Nigeria at cheap prices than what it would cost for our own manufacturing industries to produce them. So the government might look at it and be like, okay, I want to stop dumping of, you know, um, clothes into the Nigerian economy so that we will be able to help the textile industry in Nigeria, right? Because if we don't do that, people will keep getting high quality clothes at very ridiculous prices than what they would have been lower than what they would have been required to pay if Nigeria's textile industry had been the one producing those goods and services. And if you don't discourage dumping, then how will your manufacturing industries eventually grow, right? So because you are competing, you're especially if you're a developing country, you are competing against a developed country that is advanced in technology, and then that has companies benefiting from economies of scale, internal economies of scale. So of course they will be able to produce things that are sophisticated and charge a very low price because the average cost is smaller compared to what it's going to take for your own manufacturing industry that don't have the same level of technological advancement as they do, right, in producing those goods and services. So government may just decide to do that, and then sometimes maybe there are some goods that the government doesn't really want in its economy. Okay, and maybe alcohol, a kind of alcohol or whatever. So like let me just impose tax on this, a high amount of tax. So now the issue is that tax is now looking at, okay, who should eventually bear the burden of tax, right? I think I already explained. I don't have I. So tax incidence refers to who finally bears the burden of tax, right? When the government imposes taxes on goods and services on people, who eventually pays them, right? Now, taxes are divided into two broadly. We have the direct taxes and the indirect taxes. So when we're looking at tax incidence, I'm not really considering direct taxes because, of course, a direct tax is imposed on people and companies, right? Like people, human beings, you're working, then you have to pay, a tax, right? And then businesses, they have to pay corporate, income tax, that is the tax on the profits of businesses, and then personal income taxes for individuals. So, like, if you impose a tax on me, how am I going to shift the burden to? So I'm the one that is supposed to pay it, right? I know the amount I'm paying, I know when I'm supposed to pay it, okay, and so on and so forth, right? So the issue with tax incidence is about indirect taxes because these are taxes imposed on goods and services, right? So now you have the taxes, primarily imposed on producers, for example, but then to what extent will the producers, be able to push some of this burden to the consumers that are eventually make use of the product, right? So and then that takes us to what we call the price elasticity of demand, which we've done, right, in times past, and which you must have, gone through before now. So price elasticity of demand is just the degree of responsiveness of changes in quantity demanded as a result of a change in price, right? I'm not even here with a rubber band. I wanted to come with a rubber band, right? So when you have, when the price of a commodity changes a little bit, maybe it increases from like 100 naira to like 125 naira. That's just a 25% increase. And then the fall in demand was from, let's say, 1,000 to 10. Okay, let's say like that's maybe like around 1,000% decrease or something like that. So you can say that it is elastic. So that is price elastic. So the commodity in question is price elastic in the sense that price just change a little bit and consumers are responding in a great way. So if I had a rubber band, which should have been a teaching aid, which I forgot, I would have just drawn it like this, elastic, right? So price changes a little bit, and then your elasticity of demand, and people, right, consumers, they respond by decreasing their quantity demanded in a very great way, right? Something like this in a very great way. Okay, so that's elastic demand. So when you have something like that, who eventually bears the burden of tax? Okay, and then if you recall, we have five types of price elasticity of demand. The fairly elastic, which I just explained. You have the inelastic, right? You have the unitary elastic. You have the price. You have the perfect inelastic demand curve, and then you have the perfectly elastic, demand curve. So now let's begin to look at these different price elasticities to eventually see who bears, the burden of, taxes in these scenarios. Now, how do we draw for? Let's start with fairly elastic. So number one, we have fairly uh, elastic demand curve, fairly elastic demand curve. So how do we draw this guy? So you have this is you have price on this axis, and then you have quantity on this axis. So for a fairly elastic demand, okay, we said that let's say price was here, and the first quantity demanded was probably here, right? Then price increases just to this part. Price increases just that's little amount by just that little amount, and then your quantity demanded instead of being here, your key one here, it falls to something like this. It falls greatly. So we have this guy like this. So I'm trying to like sketch. So I'll be having a demand curve like this. So just let me manage it. Okay, a demand curve like this. All right. So now let's just draw a supply curve. So in this case, the tax is being imposed on the supplier, right? No, we are talking about indirect taxes. The tax is being imposed on the supplier. So you have this is a S1 supply cost. So when there is an imposition of taxes, of course, one of the factors affecting supply of goods and services is tax, right? When there is an imposition of tax, you will expect that we expect that the supply of the commodity reduces, right? So there's going to be an inward shift of the supply curve. That is what you must have done in previous classes. Now, before I even draw that, I think let me just locate the equilibrium. I can just clean this plus. This plus will just help us, to sketch out the curve. So let me locate the equilibrium. I call this the Q star, equilibrium quantity, and then this is the P star, equilibrium price. So now with the imposition of tax on the supplier, there is an inward shift of the supply curve. So I call this S2, right? There's an inward shift here of the supply curve, right? So from here, this is where the new supply curve is. This is because of tax. So you can just put the tax there. Now because of the there is a new equilibrium. So this S2 is intersecting the old demand curve here. So we trace this guy down. So this is Q2 star. I can call this one Q1 since we have two quantities now, Q1. Alright, so now how do we know the burden of tax? So if we look at let me make this guy touch. Let me make this guy touch here. And then this one, let's manage it. Okay, something like that. Okay, so now how do we now know the burden of tax? So if you look at this on this demand curve here, we just trace this to the price axis to know the price that consumers are paying now for the commodity. So I call that a price C. Of course, when taxes are imposed on commodities, consumers tend to pay higher than the price that the producer must have intended to sell the product without tax imposition, right? So you get to pay more for a commodity that is being taxed than if the commodity was not being taxed. Now, as a producer, you get to receive less, like you are receiving less price. So what that simply means is that whatever price you're selling the product, right, minus the tax imposed on it is the price that you're receiving. Okay, so if consumers end up paying more because of tax imposition, right, the producer ends up receiving less than he or she would have received if there was no tax on the product. So that's just what we're trying to say. The producer receives less because after the producer, gets revenue from the sale of the product, he still has to pay some amount of it in form of taxes. So he ends up like receiving less price, right, than if he had not if his product had not been, you know, if tax had not been imposed on his product. So this same point here, we trace it down. So we have the quality downward here. So we trace to the supply curve. This is the supply curve. So and then we bring this to the price axis here. So this is the price that the producer is receiving. So if you look at it, which of the triangles, you have an entire triangle, right? You have a triangle here, 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 and here. Let me call this A. Let me call this a B. Right. So PCAB, then PP. You have a triangle. You have a rectangle rather. You have a rectangle there. So which is bigger? So this one for cost for this one is the one for consumers, right? And then this is the one for producers. So you look at you probably realize that the rectangle rather for consumers is smaller than the rectangle for the producers. So in this particular case, the producer is bearing more of the burden of tax, right? So under fairly elastic demand, producers bear more burden. So producers bear the greater burden of tax or the greater tax incidence. So like it is affecting them more than it is affecting the consumers. That's what it means. It's affecting them more than it's affecting the consumers. Okay. Why is that the case? Of course, for elastic demand, if you raise your price a little bit, a lot of people are going to demand less of your product. So which means that you can't really tie this tax down on the consumers because many of them are leaving your commodity for another one. Okay, so you just have to like just bear as a producer, just bear to pay the bigger part of the tax. Right. So that's that about that. Now for number two, we have the fairly inelastic demand. Okay, so here you have this a demand. You have a zero, then you have the price, right? Of course, for fairly inelastic, how do we get to know that? Let's say the first price was here. First price was here, right? And then the quantity demanded was maybe here. So they are meeting at this point, for example. And then the second price happened to like increase this much, maybe here, right? And then your quantity demanded only falls by this amount. So we have maybe something like this, something like this. So try to join these 2 points. So we'll be having a demand curve this way. Oh no, it's not a curve. D D. Okay, so this is meant to be a straight line. Okay, let's let me manage it. It's meant to be a straight line. I don't have a ruler. I should have a ruler, but I don't have a ruler. All right. So now, how do we know the taxes? So in all of these cases, the tax has been imposed on the producer, right? So we now want to see if we can shift it or if we cannot shift it. Remember that I'm not tracing out any points. I was the what I was doing here, like putting this dot here, will just like help you to simplify the way you draw your elastic demand curve, your inelastic demand curve, and all of that. So it is not just drawn arbitrarily. So there's a way to draw it. So here you can see that this graph here is steeper, right, than what you have in this place. So this is more of inelastic compared to this particular one. Right. So the first supply curve. So let's just draw an arbitrary supply curve. Let's just say we have something like this. Um, S1. Okay, as it was even meant to be in it was meant to be in molecular. So when we trace it this equilibrium. Okay, no, that's not correct. So this is the first Q star, and then this is P star, the equilibrium price. So now we now have a tax on the supplier. S2, right, where this is the tax imposition. Is it parallel? Okay, no problem. So now this new position here, when we trace it, we have this, right? And then we bring it down. This is the price that consumers are paying now, PC. And then this is the price that producers are receiving now, PP. And then we just bring this down to get the equilibrium quantity after tax imposition. So we have Q star 2, Q star 1. All right, so again, we have a rectangle, right? So who has the bigger rectangle? Who has the bigger rectangle? So it is kind of clear, right? So look at this here. Okay, and compare that with this. So the of old equilibrium, compare that with this. So consumers are paying, consumers are being affected more. So that means this guy is able to push more of the burden to the consumers. And that's actually what happens because you have an inelastic demand. Okay, a great increment in price is only causing a smaller change, a smaller reduction in quantity demanded. So which means, of course, it's more or less like people don't really have a choice. So you can push that tax to them and then they pay more of it, right, compared to you. The producer also pays a part of it, but it doesn't pay all of it. Now, before I go to the other graphs, we're talking about unitary elastic and all of that. So there is a triangle. There is a triangle. So if you look at this part, there's a triangle here. So if you look at these other parts too, there's a triangle. So this triangle is telling you this triangle here is representing what we call the deadweight loss. Deadweight loss. So it is a loss in economic welfare due to the imposition of taxes. So that's just it. Deadweight loss. Dead, weight, and loss. So all of this, the area of this triangle represents the loss in economic welfare as a result of tax imposition. Right. So because of the tax now, quantity demanded reduces from equilibrium quantity reduces from Q1 to Q2 now for both of them. Right. So and if you look at it, consumers are not enjoying all of those things. Consumers end up paying, like they end up paying, bearing this part. Producers end up bearing this part. Like this other part is being borne by the entire society. Like it's a waste, right? So that's what we call loss in economic welfare. If you were to calculate the tax revenue, right, that's a result of this tax imposition. So the tax revenue is going to be the area of this rectangle, like the entire rectangle. And that's going to be our tax revenue. Then this place too, the entire rectangle represents our tax revenue. So let's say the price here was 10, and then this guy is bearing this is fairly elastic. This guy is bearing this is 12, and then this is let's say 6. Let's say 6. All right. So from here to here, from 6 to 12, that's 6, right? Like 12 minus 6, it will give you is it the length now or the breadth? To give you like it will give you 6. Then let's assume that from here to here, this is 0. From here, this is 0. Let's say this were 10. Okay, these were 10. So area of a rectangle is given as length times breadth, right? So the area will then be the distance from here to here, which is 12 minus 6. That's the breadth anyway. And then the distance between here to this place, which is 10. So we have 10 multiplied by 6, which is 60, right? So that would have been the tax revenue 60, the area of that. So, but then if you look at it between this point and this point, like nobody is getting what is here. So that is what we call deadweight loss. All right, loss in economic welfare as a result of tax imposition. So that's being said. So now let us move to the other part of elasticities and look at their tax incidence. Now, for our unitary elastic demand curve, we know that a change in the price, when the demand is unitary elastic, a change in the price by a certain percentage is going to lead to a corresponding change in quantity demanded. So if in the opposite direction now, so if if the price increased by 25%, quantity demanded is going to reduce by 25%, right? So that's what unitary elastic demand curve is all about. Now let's also look at the tax incidence or unitary elastic demand. So this is Q, and then this is price, this is 0. So let's say the former price were here, for example, So the former price were there, then the former quantity was by assumption here. So the two of them are meeting at this point, right? So if this price rises to something as much as this, quantity demanded may fall as much as this too. So you have something like this guy. So I hope that is kind of okay. So we have this. So let's manage it. Okay, let's manage that. Now our supply curve. So initially the supply curve of this S1, and then the equilibrium. So this is Q1 star, and then this is P star. Um, the star was meant to be on the P, but it's okay. Now we have a tax imposed on the supply. If the tax had been imposed on the consumers, it would be the demand curve that will be shifting inward, right? But now we are just assuming all through it is imposed on the supplier. So we are going to shift this. We have S2. Okay, it's a little bit manageable. Okay, it's a little bit manageable. So we have this guy here. Okay, then this is the price that consumers are paying now, and coming down here. So this is the price that producers are receiving now, and then this is the quantity that is being produced. This is the equivalent quantity in the market, Q2 star. So when you look at it, this area here, this area here, this part, all right, and this part are of the same size, So whenever the demand curve is neutral elastic, the burden is equally shared. Tax burden is equally shared. The tax burden is equally shared. Okay, between the consumers and then the producers. So that's all. Then the fourth one, we have perfectly elastic. Okay, let me do perfectly inelastic first because I found perfectly elastic demand curve pretty interesting. Okay, so you have this. So Q again, P. For a perfectly elastic demand curve, a little change in price would make consumers to leave the product entirely. For a perfectly inelastic demand curve, no matter the change in price, consumers keep buying the same amount of commodity. Okay, so if you remember, if the price were here, for example, consumers would be demanding this quantity, and if the price were to increase by whatever amount, consumers are still going to be demanding the same commodity. That's why the demand curve is often a straight line. Is a straight line, not just often. The demand curve for a parity inelastic demand curve is straight line, is vertical, right? So you have this is D, and then this is D. Now, tax is being imposed on the producer of goods and services now, like on the company producing, or tax is imposed on the commodity. Of course, a commodity that has this type of demand curve. Now you have this is the initial supply S1, and then this supply curve as a result of taxes is shifting to this S2. So it's meant to be drawn parallel. So like I said, it's a day of managing. So we have this guy. This is a Q star, and this is P star. Okay, this is the equilibrium price. So and then you look at this is the price that consumers are paying now. So this is no, it's meant to be here. Okay, consumers are paying. So we can't trace the equilibrium down to the supply curve. Like there's no space to do that. Like usually we used to trace this new equilibrium, you trace it down. So by the time you take this new equilibrium and you trace it down, it is still going to be at the old, what do you call it now? At the old equilibrium, at the old point. So which means that supplier is bearing none of this burden at all. So everything is being pushed to the consumers of the product. So all of this parts now is the entire tax burden being borne by what do you call it now? by the consumers. So is borne, tax burden is borne entirely by the consumer. And I think I'm just figuring out something here. Whenever you have whenever you have a tax with a partly elastic, a partly inelastic demand curve, I can't see a deadweight loss. Like I can't see deadweight loss. So that means there's no deadweight loss. So in case you have maybe an OBG question that is asking like one of the following um tax is imposed on goods with different commodity price elasticity of demand. So in which of the following would you not have a deadweight loss? Of course, this one. But I'm just realizing it, when trying this like right now. Okay, so the quantity demanded is not the equilibrium quantity in the market is the same thing. So and then we don't have any triangle left like this guy here. So there's no debit loss. Now number five, which is the very interesting one that I like. Okay, so you have perfectly elastic demand. So when your demand curve is partly elastic, of course we know that for partly elastic, this is this straight? Okay, it's looking somehow. Not like the not like the preceding one was straight either, but I didn't notice. Okay, I think it's worse. Manageable. So this is Q and then this is P. So by finding elastic demand, it is so elastic that if you try to like increase the price a little bit, people don't buy your product anymore. Like they just leave your product. So which means that they don't really give you the chance to increase your price. So if the initial price was this, right? And then this was the initial quantity they are meeting here. So you can't raise this price. So like you can just decide to like sell maybe a lower amount or a higher amount at this particular price. So at the end of the day, we'll be having this. All right, so that will be the demand call. Okay, now we have the initial supply call, which is this. So S1. Of course, this becomes the equilibrium quantity, and then this becomes the equilibrium price. Now, if there is an imposition of tax on the supply of the product, so this guy is going to shift. So this is S2 shifting inwards due to tax. Right. So um, let me see. I think I didn't draw this guy well. Let me still extend this person. Okay, let me just. I'm trying to like get something. Okay, I think this is better. All right. So if you look at it, this is the new equilibrium. Okay, where S is intersecting the old demand curve. You trace this guy down here. So this is the price that the producer has to charge now. So this is the price of the producer, and then this is Q star 2, Q star 1. I should have been putting this arrow since. Okay, I should have been doing this. Okay, so there is a reduction in the equilibrium quantity in the market. Now, there is no demand curve. Like there is no new demand curve, or there is no higher part of the demand curve where we can trace this up to. For example, look at here. When this supply curve shifted here, the intersection was above the initial equilibrium. The intersection on the demand curve was above the initial equilibrium. But here, the intersection is just on, you know, it's just on the demand curve, like the same part of the demand curve as this guy. Now, what I mean the same part, like it's still on that straight line. Okay, that's what I mean. Not necessarily the same price because they have different quantities, but it's still on that straight line. So like the price is not the price that the consumers are paying is the same thing. Right. So the P star that they were paying before is the P star that they are paying now. Now, but for the suppliers like take less. So everything here is a tax burden being entirely borne by the supplier. So here tax burden is entirely borne by the supplier of the product or by the producer of the product, and then you want to put it. So I want to believe that these things are easy to remember. So we again we looked at the tax incidence considering the different price elasticity of demand and then been able to generate results simply, right? So I would implore you to like practice. Like the more you practice, the more you know all of these things, right? Just practice, you're going to get it. All right. So what else? Maybe my practice also with change in supply, but like one thing I should let you know is if the same amount of tax, right, same amount of per unit tax is imposed on either the consumer or the producer of an indirect or either the producer or the consumer of a product, the result is the same, right? The result is the same. So I intended to like do a mathematical computation in this class, but the time is already fast spent. So I guess that's going to be another. I've done it before. Like there is a video that we did on tax incidents and a mathematical video that we did on tax. Maybe I'll just leave the description of that video in this. Maybe I'll just leave the link of that video in the description of this particular one. All right. It's an old video. That's why I wanted to do a new one. Right. But then the content is still the same, so you're still going to enjoy it. Thank you very much for attending this class. See you next time. Bye.